I get it when you've been hunting for a new bass, the temptation to grab the cheapest 5-string you can find online is real, but most of those budget-range fretless things end up feeling like a compromise you regret after the first gig. The cheap wood, the thin neck, the pickups that sound more like static than tone, those little details bite you when you're trying to lock in a groove. So the question I keep hearing is, does splurging a little on something like the Ibanez SR Bass Workshop Fretless actually make sense, or is it just another pricey gimmick? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about this model, the first thing that stuck with me was the reputation of Ibanez's SR line for balancing playability with a sleek aesthetic, and the fact that this version is a true 5-string fretless. That combination isn't something you see every day in the mid-range market, and it immediately raised the stakes for me. I dug through a handful of forum threads, skimmed a couple of YouTube demos, and even chatted with a couple of gigging players who already own a Workshop Series bass. What emerged was a picture of an instrument that feels intentionally built for players who need that extra low beat but also want the expressive slide capability that only a fretless can give. Let's talk about the wood choices first, because that's where a lot of the hidden trade-offs hide. The body is made from Okoume, a lightweight African hardwood that's often used in high-end guitars for its resonant properties and low weight. In practical terms, that means the bass sits comfortably on stage or in a cramped practice room without feeling like a brick. I tried it with a standard strap and it stayed balanced even when I leaned into a hard-picking groove. The maple top adds a little brightness, which you'll notice when you're pulling out those higher mids on a clean tone. If you've ever struggled with a bass that feels like a toddler's instrument because the wood is too soft, this one feels surprisingly solid for its weight. Now, the neck. Ibanez paired a maple-walnut combo with their Panga fingerboard, a term that's essentially their marketing name for a high-grade, smooth-finished rosewood substitute. The shape is a thin C profile, which many players describe as fast and comfortable for intricate finger work. I spent a full session running through a funk line that required quick muting and then switched to a slow, melodic slide in the upper register. The neck held its shape. There was no noticeable dead spot where the fretless action got fuzzy. The trade-off here is that the slim profile might feel a bit narrow for players with larger hands who are used to a chunkier feel, especially on a 5-string where the low B can crowd the fingerboard. The pickups are a pair of split-coil humbuckers, and that's where the Workshop really starts to show its value. Split-coil designs give you that classic Fender-style punch with reduced hum, but Ibanez tunes them a bit warmer, which suits the natural resonance of a fretless. In my test, the low B sang with enough body to cut through a full band, while the higher strings retained clarity for slap or fingerstyle playing. The downside is that you won't get the aggressive mid-scoop that a lot of metal-oriented players might crave. This bass leans toward a smooth, jazzy character. If you plan to sit in a rock trio that relies on a gritty, overdriven bass tone, you might need to add an external preamp or pedal to shape the sound further. One practical strength I found is how the instrument behaves in a live setting. The low-gloss brown Topaz burst finish isn't just pretty, the low-gloss surface resists fingerprints and stage sweat better than a high-shine coating. I didn't have to keep wiping it down between songs, and the color actually looks richer under stage lights. The 5-string layout with the low B tuned down to 30 Hz also means you can drop into lower keys without needing a separate baritone bass, which is a cost saver if you gig in genres that dip into that range. Think progressive rock or modern jazz fusion. On the flip side, the fretless nature introduces a learning curve. If you've been playing fretted bass for years, you'll notice the immediate difference in intonation. The instrument does come set up with a fairly generous string height, which helps beginners avoid buzzing, but you'll still need to develop a solid ear for micro-adjustments, especially on fast runs. The Panga fingerboard feels smooth, but because it's not traditional ebony, some players report a slightly softer feel under the fingertips. That's a minor detail unless you're used to a very hard surface for slides. Who should walk away? If you're a beginner who's just getting their first bass, the 5-string fretless might be a bit overwhelming, both technically and financially. You'll spend time learning fretless technique while also adjusting to the extra string, which can slow progress. Likewise, if you're a heavy metal bassist looking for a razor-sharp attack and a tone.